morning my wife's hands started shaking at the breakfast table, I told her she was probably just tired. That's the thing about being married 41 years. You start thinking you know everything about the person sitting across from you. You think you know what tired looks like, what stress looks like, what getting older looks like. But I didn't know what poison looked like. Not then, not until it was too late. My name is Murray Ashford. I'm 63 years old, retired pipe fitter out of Bakersfield, California. My wife Loretta and I bought our house on Marigold Lane in 1994, back when the neighborhood was nothing but almond orchards and dirt roads. We raised 2 kids in that house. Our son, who lives up in Portland now with his family, and our daughter, who lived 12 minutes away with her husband in a duplex off Route 58. Loretta was the kind of woman who remembered everyone's birthday. Not just family, the mail carrier, the woman at the dry cleaners, the kid who bagged groceries at Vaughn's. She kept a little notebook in the kitchen drawer with dates and names, and every year she'd bake something or write a card. That was Loretta. She made people feel seen. So when she started feeling dizzy in January, I didn't panic. She was 61. Her blood pressure had been creeping up for a couple years. Dr. Pemberton put her on a new medication in December, and I figured her body was still adjusting. "I just feel off," she told me one evening, sitting on the edge of our bed. "Like the room tilts sometimes." "Give it a few weeks," I said. "New meds always take time." She nodded. Loretta trusted me. That's what kills me now. She trusted me to take care of her, and I told her to give it a few weeks. By February, the dizziness got worse. She started having nausea in the mornings. Lost her appetite. I'd make her oatmeal with brown sugar, the way she liked it, and she'd take 3 bites and push the bowl away. She went back to Dr. Pemberton twice. He ran blood work, adjusted her dosage, told her to stay hydrated. Nothing alarming showed up. Our daughter came by almost every day. She'd bring groceries, help with laundry, sit with Loretta on the back patio while I ran errands. She seemed devoted. I remember telling my son on the phone, "Thank God for your sister. I don't know what we'd do without her." He said, "She's always been Mama's girl." That was true. Or at least, that's what I believed. Her husband had been out of steady work for about 8 months at that point. He'd been let go from a commercial roofing company after some dispute with the foreman. He was the type who always had a reason why nothing was his fault. Charming when he wanted to be. Could talk his way into your living room and make you feel like you'd invited him. But underneath that smile, there was something calculating. I'd felt it for years but never said anything because my daughter loved him. And Loretta said I was being too hard on the boy. "He's trying, Murray," Loretta would say. "Not everyone finds their footing right away." He was 34. I found my footing at 19 carrying pipe through mud in Kern County oil fields. But I kept my mouth shut. In March, Loretta collapsed in the garden. I was in the garage sharpening a mower blade when I heard the watering can hit the concrete. I ran out and found her on her side near the rose bushes, conscious but unable to stand. Her lips were pale. Her pulse was racing. I called 911 and held her hand on the driveway until the ambulance came. At the hospital, they ran every test they could think of. EKG, echocardiogram, metabolic panel. The doctor said her heart rhythm was irregular. They used the word arrhythmia and talked about possible underlying conditions. They kept her overnight for observation, then sent her home with a new prescription and instructions to follow up in 2 weeks. My daughter was there through all of it. She slept in the hospital chair. She brought Loretta's favorite blanket from home. She held her mother's hand and whispered, "I'm right here, Mama. I'm not going anywhere." Looking back, I wonder if she was watching to see if the doctors would find anything, if she was measuring how close we were getting to the truth. April came. Loretta seemed to stabilize for a week or 2, then crashed again. More nausea, tremors in her hands. She couldn't keep food down some days. I started sleeping light, waking up every few hours to check on her breathing. She'd gotten so thin. Her collarbones jutted out under her nightgown like she was disappearing from the inside. "Maybe we should see a specialist," I told her. "Dr. Pemberton says it's the medication interacting with something. He's working on it. Then maybe we need a different doctor." She reached over and squeezed my hand. I just need you, Murray. That's enough. On April 19th, I woke up at 5 a.m. and Loretta wasn't breathing. She was lying on her side, facing the window, the way she always slept. I touched her shoulder and it was cool. I knew before I even turned her over. I knew when the sound that came out of me was something I didn't recognize. It came from somewhere deep and old and broken. The paramedics came. They were kind. They used gentle words. The coroner's report said cardiac arrest secondary to chronic arrhythmia. Natural causes. She was 61 years old and her heart just stopped. That's what they told me. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Overcast, which felt right. The church was full. Loretta knew a lot of people, and a lot of people knew Loretta. My son flew down from Portland with his wife and their 2 kids. My daughter sat in the front pew with her husband, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. He had his arm around her. He wore a suit I'd never seen before. I remember thinking it looked expensive for a man with no job. After the burial, people came back to the house. Casseroles and pound cakes covered every surface in the kitchen. My daughter organized everything. She made coffee, greeted guests, cleaned up afterward. She was perfect. Daddy, I don't want you alone in this house, she said that evening after everyone had left. Let me come by every morning. I'll make breakfast, keep you company. I said okay. What else was I going to say? My wife was in the ground, and my daughter was offering to take care of me. I said okay. For the next 6 days, she came every morning at 7:30. She'd let herself in with the spare key Loretta had given her years ago. She'd make eggs, toast, sometimes pancakes. She'd brew coffee and set it on the table with Loretta's ceramic creamer, the one shaped like a rooster. She'd sit with me and talk about nothing. The weather, a show she'd been watching, anything to fill the silence. On the 7th day, my phone rang at 9:14 in the morning. My daughter had just left. I was sitting in the living room staring at Loretta's reading chair, the one with the dent in the cushion where she always sat. Mr. Ashford? This is Dr. Pemberton. Yes, doctor. I need to see you in my office today. Can you come in this afternoon? Something in his voice made my chest tighten. It wasn't the voice he used for routine follow-ups. It was lower. Careful. What's this about? I'd rather discuss it in person. And, Mr. Ashford, I need to ask you something, and I need you to take it seriously. All right. Don't mention this call to your daughter. Or her husband. Can you do that for me? I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, and the room tilted the way Loretta described. Everything shifted. Something cracked under the surface of everything I thought I knew. I'll be there at 2, I said. I drove to Dr. Pemberton's office with both hands on the wheel, gripping it so hard my knuckles went white. The waiting room was empty. His nurse led me straight back. Dr. Soor Pemberton was sitting behind his desk with a manila folder open in front of him. He looked like he hadn't slept. Sit down, Murray. I sat. After Loretta passed, I requested a more detailed toxicology panel on her last set of blood work. The one from her March visit. Something had been nagging me. Her symptoms didn't line up cleanly with anything cardiovascular, the dizziness, the nausea, the visual disturbances she mentioned at her last appointment. I should have caught it sooner, and I'll carry that for the rest of my life. Caught what? He turned the folder toward me and pointed to a line on the lab report. I didn't understand the numbers, but I understood the word next to them. Digitoxin. It's a cardiac glycoside, he said. Similar to digoxin, but older, rarely prescribed anymore. In small, repeated doses, it mimics the symptoms of heart disease. Dizziness, nausea, arrhythmia. And in a patient already on blood pressure medication, it would be nearly impossible to distinguish from a drug interaction. Unless you were specifically looking for it. Are you telling me someone poisoned my wife? I'm telling you that this substance was in her blood at levels that are not consistent with accidental exposure. Someone administered it to her deliberately, over a period of weeks, possibly months. I didn't speak for a long time. I sat in that chair and stared at the lab report and felt the world rearrange itself around me. Every memory I had of the last 4 months shifted. Every cup of tea, every bowl of soup, every morning my daughter came by and sat with Loretta on the patio while I was out. Why did you tell me not to say anything to my daughter? Dr. Pemberton looked at me with the expression of a man who wished he didn't have to say what he was about to say. Because Loretta told me something in confidence during her last visit. She said she'd noticed unauthorized transactions in her and your joint savings account, small amounts, 50 here, 80 there, over several months. She said she was going to bring it up with you, but wanted to wait until she felt better. She also mentioned that your daughter had been managing some of her online banking because her vision had gotten too blurry to read the screen. I left Dr. Pemberton's office and sat in my truck in the parking lot for 40 minutes. I watched people walk in and out of the strip mall across the street. A woman carried a bag of dog food to her car. A teenager kicked a soda can down the sidewalk. The world kept moving. Normal people doing normal things while I sat there understanding for the first time that my daughter may have killed her mother. I called the police that evening. Detective Oakes came to the house the next morning, plainclothes, calm voice. He sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my daughter made me breakfast every morning. And he listened. He took the lab report. He asked questions I didn't want to answer. Your daughter had regular access to the home? Yes. She prepared food and drinks for your wife? Yes. And her husband, he's been unemployed. About 8 months. Do you know if your wife had a life insurance policy? I did. Loretta and I had taken out policies years ago. Hers was $250,000 and the beneficiary was me, with the secondary beneficiary split between our 2 children. Our savings account had about $140,000 in it. The house was paid off and worth around $380,000. Detective Oakes nodded slowly. That's a significant estate for someone to be motivated by. The investigation moved fast after that. Oakes got a warrant for my daughter's phone records and her husband's. What they found made me sick. Text messages between the 2 of them going back to October, 5 months before Loretta died. They'd researched digitoxin online. They'd ordered the compound through a veterinary supply website using a fake name. Her husband had set up a separate email account to manage the purchase. They'd discussed timing, dosage, how to make it look natural. One message from her husband read, "She's old and already sick. Nobody's going to question it." My wife was 61 years old. She wasn't old. She was the youngest person in every room she walked into. She danced in the kitchen when Motown came on the radio. She chased our grandkids around the yard last Thanksgiving until she was out of breath and laughing so hard she cried. She wasn't old. She was everything. They arrested my daughter at her duplex on a Wednesday morning. Her husband tried to run out the back door and made it about 30 feet before 2 officers tackled him on the neighbor's lawn. I wasn't there for it. Oakes told me later, "She didn't say a word when we put the cuffs on," he said. But he wouldn't stop talking, kept saying it was her idea, that she pressured him into it, that he never wanted anyone to get hurt. Funny how that works. The man who texted, "Nobody's going to question it," suddenly had nothing to do with it. The weeks leading up to the trial were the worst of my life, and I say that as a man who buried his wife 8 weeks earlier. My son came down from Portland and stayed with me. He didn't say much. He'd sit on the porch with me in the evenings, and we'd watch the sky turn colors over the almond trees. Sometimes he put his hand on my shoulder and leave it there. That was enough. The neighbors were kind. Alma Prescott from 2 doors down brought me dinner every other night. She never asked questions. She'd just knock, hand me a foil-covered dish and say, "You don't have to eat it tonight, Murray, just whenever you're ready." I wasn't ready for a lot of things. The trial started in August. The prosecution laid everything out in order. The text messages, the purchase records, the toxicology report. Dr. Pemberton testified about the digitoxin levels and the timeline of Loretta's symptoms. A forensic pharmacologist explained how the doses had been calibrated to cause gradual organ failure while mimicking pre-existing conditions. My daughter sat at the defense table in a navy blazer. She looked thin. She didn't look at me. Not once. Her attorney argued that she'd been coerced by her husband, that she was a victim of domestic manipulation, that she never intended for her mother to die. He painted a picture of a young woman trapped in a controlling marriage, pressured into something unthinkable. The prosecutor played the text messages out loud in court. One of them was from my daughter, not her husband. It said, "How long before the insurance pays out? I want to move to Arizona before summer." The jury heard that. I heard that. My daughter wanted to cash in on her mother's death and buy a house in Arizona. While Loretta was shaking at the breakfast table, while she was collapsing in the garden, while she was lying in a hospital bed wondering what was wrong with her body, my daughter was browsing real estate listings in Scottsdale. There was a moment during the trial when the prosecutor asked my daughter's husband about the bank account withdrawals. He broke down on the stand, not from guilt, from panic. He could see the walls closing in. He started pointing fingers at everyone. He said my daughter handled the money. He said she had access to the accounts. He said he didn't even know about the insurance policy, but the emails told a different story. He'd been the one to look up the policy details online. He'd searched life insurance payout timeline and how long after death does insurance pay on his phone. The digital trail was thorough and damning. My daughter was convicted of first-degree murder. Her husband was convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and accessory to first-degree murder. She received 30 years to life. He received 25 years. When the judge read the verdict, my daughter finally looked at me. She turned in her seat, and her eyes found mine across the courtroom. I don't know what she was looking for. Forgiveness. Understanding. Maybe she just wanted to see if I was still there. I was still there. I've always been there. That's what she never understood. After the trial, I went home to an empty house. Loretta's reading chair still had the dent in the cushion. Her notebook was still in the kitchen drawer, filled with birthdays she'd never celebrate. I sat at the table where my daughter used to make me breakfast, and I thought about the coffee she'd brewed for me every morning in that first week after the funeral. I thought about how she'd used Loretta's rooster creamer, how she'd sit across from me with that concerned expression and ask how I was sleeping. I wondered if she was measuring me the way she'd measured her mother, if she was watching for symptoms, if I was next. Detective Oates told me later that they found a second batch of digitoxin in the duplex and a plastic bag tucked behind cleaning supplies under the kitchen sink. Enough for another round. He didn't say whether it was meant for me. He didn't have to. For months after the trial, I barely left the house. My son wanted me to move to Portland. Alma kept bringing food. The grief counselor the church recommended said I was experiencing compounded trauma, which is a clinical way of saying everything I loved tried to kill me in one way or another. Then in November, something happened that I wasn't prepared for. My daughter was 7 months pregnant when she was arrested. I didn't mention that before because I still don't know how to talk about it. She'd told us at Easter, 2 weeks after Loretta's funeral. She stood in the kitchen holding her belly and said, "Mama would have been so happy." Nearly hit the floor. The baby was born in the county detention facility in late September. A girl. 6 pounds, 4 ounces. Healthy. The social worker called me and said they needed to place the child. Her father was incarcerated. Her mother was incarcerated. There were no relatives on the father's side willing to step forward. "Mr. Ashford, would you be willing to take temporary custody?" I stood in Loretta's kitchen, holding the phone, looking at the rooster creamer on the counter. I thought about my wife. I thought about the woman who remembered every birthday, who baked cookies for the mail carrier, who chased grandkids around the yard. "Bring her to me," I said. They brought her on a Tuesday. Overcast, like the funeral. The social worker carried her in a car seat, wrapped in a hospital blanket. She was sleeping. Her face was round and red and perfect, and she looked nothing like her mother and nothing like her father. She looked like Loretta. The same chin, the same faint dimple on the left cheek. I named her Loretta May. My son said I was crazy, He said I was too old. He said the child was the product of a nightmare, and I'd be reminded of that every time I looked at her. I'll be reminded of her grandmother every time I look at her, I said, and that's exactly what I need. The first few months were brutal. I hadn't cared for a baby in over 30 years. I fumbled with diapers. I burned formula. I walked the hallway at 2 a.m., bouncing her on my shoulder, singing The Temptations because that's all I could remember the words to. Alma came over and showed me how to burp her properly. My son sent a crib from Portland and called every night to check on us. Slowly, something I didn't expect happened. The house started to feel like a home again. Not the same home. Not the one Loretta and I built together. But something new. Something small and fragile and worth protecting. Little Loretta took her first steps in the living room, 3 feet from her grandmother's reading chair. I cried. I sat on the floor and cried while she wobbled toward me with her arms out, and I caught her the way I should have caught everything else. People ask me if I've forgiven my daughter. I don't answer that question. Forgiveness isn't something I can wrap up in a neat sentence for someone else's comfort. What I know is this. I write to her once a month. I send her pictures of the baby. I tell her about the milestones. First tooth. First word. First time she pointed at a butterfly in the garden and laughed. I don't know if that's forgiveness. Maybe it's something else. Maybe it's just a father who can't stop being a father, even when his child has done the unforgivable. My daughter wrote back once. One letter, 6 months after the sentencing. It was 3 pages long, and I read it sitting on the back patio where she used to sit with Loretta. She said she was sorry. She said her husband had convinced her they'd never get ahead, that they'd always be struggling, that the money would fix everything. She said she didn't realize what she was doing until it was too late, and by then she was too afraid to stop. I don't know if I believe that. I don't know if it matters. What matters is that Loretta May is 2 years old now. She has her grandmother's laugh. She has her grandmother's stubbornness. She throws her sippy cup on the floor and looks at me with those brown eyes, daring me to say something, and I see Loretta in every inch of her face. I'm 63 years old and I'm raising a toddler. My back hurts every morning and my knees sound like gravel when I stand up. I burn dinner at least twice a week and I still can't figure out how to work the baby monitor app on my phone. But every night, after I put little Loretta in her crib, I sit in the living room and I talk to my wife. I tell her about the day. I tell her what the baby did. I tell her about the butterflies in the garden. And sometimes, when the house is quiet and the light comes through the window just right, I swear I can feel her sitting in that chair. The one with the dent in the cushion. The one that still smells like her perfume if you lean in close enough. She's still here, in this house, in this baby, and every birthday I remember to mark in her notebook. They took a lot from me. My wife, my daughter, my faith in the people I trusted most, but they didn't take everything. They didn't take this little girl, and they didn't take the 41 years of love that Loretta poured into these walls. Where are you joining me from today? Drop your city in the comments, and if the story touched something in you, I'd appreciate it if you'd subscribe. These stories aren't easy to tell, but they're important, because somewhere out there, someone is sitting at a kitchen table, trusting the wrong person, and maybe hearing this will make them pay attention to what's right in front of them. I'm Murray Ashford from Bakersfield, California, and this is what happened to my family.